Hi everybody, welcome to Dram Daddy Whiskey. I'm Dan, and tonight we're going to try a bottle from the newest premium line of whiskey from Jim Beam. We're talking about Hardin's Creek, Jacob's Well. These days it seems like almost every brand of whiskey is named after some historical figure who meant a lot to the company or who was instrumental to the history of bourbon. But there's like a million of those folks. Blanton, Elmer T. Lee, Parker Beam, Jim Beam, Booker Noe, Eddie and Jimmy Russell, Elijah Craig, William Heaven Hill. There's a ton. So it's kind of hard to get kind of sold by a story that one of these brands is trying to tell about their namesake. This one's a little different. There wasn't just a bottle in this tin can here. There was a little pamphlet, a wallet, a TV remote control, a Santa hat, and Robin the Boy Wonder. But the book is the important part. And it tells us a little bit about the origin of Jim Beam Distillery and their family history, the history of bourbon. And according to this, Johannes Jacob Beam in 1795 in the foothills of Western Kentucky, he laid down a homestead that was fed by a creek from a river. And the creek was Hardin's Creek. And it was that river that fed a mill that they used to grind corn, that they used to make the mash that eventually became the bourbon that we all know and love as Jim Beam. And the water that they used to make that mash and that they used for their home came from a well that Johannes Jacob Beam put on the property. It was Jacob's Well. So this bourbon was named after the real origin of James Beam in Kentucky and in bourbon. One would hope that the bourbon will live up to the namesake and the importance that the namesake has. Let's see. Kudos to Jim Beam, because this is a premium bottle. It cost a pretty penny, and they make you go through hell to get this bottle out and to get a dram. You gotta pop it out of this thing if you kept it. You gotta open this little leather strap, and then you gotta yank off this heavy cork. That's a lot of decision points compared to twisting off a bottle of Evan Williams or popping a cork of any other bottle. And I kid you not, it has kept me from opening this bottle before, knowing that I'd have to go through all those steps to open it. So thanks for saving me some money, Jim B. So I've talked a lot about the history and the namesake. Let's talk a little bit about the whiskey that's actually in the bottle while we let it rest. So Hardin's Creek, Jacob's Well. This is 184 months aged is what it says on the bottle. That is 15 years and 4 months. So this is a 15-year bourbon. It's 108 proof, so 54% ABV. Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. What was the first for me? Per 1.5 fluid ounces. A shot is 1.5 fluid ounces, by the way. Average analysis calories, 131. Carbohydrates, 0 grams. Protein, 0 grams. Fat, 0 grams. Good to know. And it is distilled and bottled by James Beam Distilling Co., Claremont, Kentucky. Suppose column distilled, double distilled. So they used a column distill as opposed to a pot still, and it was distilled twice. Let's see what we get on the nose. Rich oak. Some maple. Dark, supple leather. Good amount of rye spice. Vanilla, brown sugar, maybe a touch of cinnamon. Notably, no nuttiness on this so far. And I almost always get nuts or peanut butter on any kind of Jim Beam product. Smells incredible, especially if you don't want like a fruity or bright bourbon. If you like those darker notes, this will be right up your alley. Let's give it a taste. Chocolatey oak. It's rich. Viscous. You get some of that rye spice on the back, not too strong, but it does have a bit of a cola aftertaste. Like a little bit like if you're drinking Coke from a cup or something like that and it starts to go a little bit flat. That's bad for the soda, but for a bourbon, it's really good. That cola note's coming out a little bit more on the nose now too. I can pick up on the notes that I usually associate with being like a nuttiness from Jim Beam, but it's almost like the extra age causes it to evolve into this sweet oak that's a lot more balanced, and I think is where that cola note was coming from too. This is awesome. The viscosity on this is really nice too. It's thick, like you can chew on this a little bit. It's really good. If like a Knob Creek small batch or a 12 year tasted like a Snickers bar or something like that, this is like you blended up that Snickers bar with some maple syrup, something else to give it a little bit of oakiness, maybe a sprinkle of brown sugar, and then drizzle that over a pancake. I can appreciate that Jim Beam makes good whiskey without being the biggest fan of it personally, just because the nuttiness stands out a bit too much for me normally. But this has the Jim Beam quality to it. Like it has that profile somehow without the nuttiness. And so you can tell that it's Jim Beam, but I also think it's really good and I really enjoy drinking it. This is aged whiskey done right. It's not over oaked. The oak on it is perfect. It takes younger iterations of similar products from the same distillery and improves on them in just about every way. And it does it at a really good proof point. This is fantastic. Time to score it. I have literally nothing bad to say about this whiskey. I didn't go into this thinking I would give this whiskey anything above an 8 point something, but I can't think of a good reason now not to bump it into the 9 category. So Hardin's Creek Jacob's Well gets, from me, a 9.3. This is an amazing whiskey. I'd say it has mid-level complexity, but the different flavors it dances between are all amazing. I don't know that I've had a better product from Jim Beam that still tastes like Jim Beam. It's like they figured it out and put it in this bottle. Not to say that they haven't figured it out before. They're like one of, if not the biggest distillers for bourbon in the world. But for me, this is what all Jim Beam aspires to be. On to the grade. So we got to take into account how hard it is to find and how much you have to spend to get it, plus packaging, the whole experience. I gotta be honest, the tin might make a difference for me. I started my whiskey experience with Scotch mainly, where almost every bottle comes in a tube or a tin or a box or something like that, and I hated it. But aside from the prophylactic experience that this tin and the strap are, I actually kind of like it. That extra presentation for a bourbon, for something that's supposed to be extra special, it delivers that message a little bit better when not everyone else is doing something like that. Rarity, this one isn't easy to find. I don't know that it's the most difficult bourbon to find though either, but you do have to try really hard to be able to find it. Price, definitely not cheap at all. This is in like the mid hundreds MSRP, plus tax on top of that. But it's also a 15-year aged bourbon. So all things considered, the grade I would give this release is, honestly, is an A. Incredible bourbon, tough to find, but findable. Not cheap, pretty expensive, but worth it, especially given the market for aged bourbon now. Take it from me, someone who is not a Jim Beam fanboy, even though I appreciate what they do. If you can find this bourbon for close to MSRP and you enjoy any bit of oak and darker notes to a bourbon, buy it. It's a fantastic pour. I really enjoy it. It's going to be tough when it's gone because I don't know whether they're going to release this one or not again. So I guess we'll see. Life's worth living. Bourbons like these are worth drinking. Until next time, cheers.